Well, welcome. Thank you, everyone, again. My name is Emma Summers, and I am the Director of Business Development here at Vector. Just a little bit about us. We're a premier fund admin focused on closed-ended alternative investment vehicles. So we basically support all the back office for funds that are in venture, private equity. We work with fund of funds, digital assets, real estate, and debt. I want to thank you both, Kristen and Nicole, for joining me on the fourth session of our Essential Fund Launch webinar series. Super excited to have you both here as my guests today. For this session, we're going to be talking about how to best leverage your service providers and tech stack as a fund admin, or a fund manager, excuse me. We have some really great questions that we're going to go over. We're going to talk about who you need to engage with, how to select these providers, diving into how to choose your tech stack, and more. Kristen and Nicole are VC ops experts, and I'm really excited to get their insight on some of these topics. Just like the other sessions that we've done, we're going to be spending 45 minutes chatting through some questions that I have for them. We'll spend 15 minutes at the end going through any questions that you might have in the audience. And at the bottom right hand of your screen, you should be able to see a questions chat. There you can pop in your questions. We'll go through those at the end. And we're actually recording this session too, so we'll send around a link at the end as a follow-up so you can rewatch it or share it if you'd like as well. Kristen and Nicole, I'd love if you could introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about Strut Consulting, and then we can kick it off.
Sure. I'll go first and let Nicole finish. My name's Kristen. I'm the founder and CEO of Strut. I started this in 2016, basically a culmination of my time in-house at a variety of different sized funds, and also had the wonderful opportunity of getting in really early in the emerging manager space in 2013, 14, 15, 16. And getting my feet wet there. Built Strut with the intention of helping fund managers both get a successful foundation setting when they're setting their fund up for the first time, and then helping them level up their operations in all facets as their fund grows and matures. It was just me until late 2020 when we started building a team. Nicole was one of my first and most fantastic hires. She has an incredible background that I'll let her share. But our goal is to give fund managers a lot of the oomph they need to be successful on the operational side of running the fund like a business. We do a lot at Strut. I always joke, not because we're insane, but because we've been with fund managers through so many different cycles of a fundraise, number of funds under belt, and just watch them grow and mature over time. And our goal is to provide a lot of the tactical support, services and tools they need to succeed as they go through those growth cycles, and keep it all under one house. We have an incredible team of VC ops experts. We try to pick the best of the best over here to work with our clients. They each are sort of a Swiss Army knife when it comes to the work, but they all have a unique skill set and a proficiency in a certain facet, whether it's investor relations or portfolio service, fractional CFO. We do events, we do PR Marcoms, we do people ops, HR, and talent, and of course the big nebulous blob of ops. So that's the quick and dirty on us, and I'll let Nicole introduce herself.
Yeah, great. Hi, everyone. My name is Nicole Fuller. I'm the COO of Strut. I've been here with Kristen for almost a few years now. It's been a wonderful and wild ride. Prior to Strut, I was in the service provider space, which kind of gives me a pretty unique perspective on this piece of the webinar. Prior to Strut, I was at Aduro leading BD and onboarding team, and got the unique opportunity to really see, as Aduro scaled up over the last 5 years, be able to kind of walk through that launch with all the hundreds of new emerging managers, and that was incredible to walk through with them. I learned a lot, and I'm now happy to share my experience on the operations side.
Awesome. Thank you both. I'm super excited about this webinar. If you know me, I've worked with Nicole for a number of years. We used to work together. And I met Kristen through Nicole and have had an amazing relationship with not only the Strut side, but also Kristen's community in emerging managers and VC ops side as well. So I want to start off with the basics. So we'll get into the questions. I'll start very broad like all of the other webinars, but what are the main service providers that you need when launching a fund?
Yeah, I think I'll jump in here first. I think first and foremost, legal should be the first service provider that you go after. They'll be really instrumental in helping you kind of navigate launching a fund for the first time. Then you have fund admin, tax, audit, if you are indeed being audited. And then, every once in a while we'll get a question as to whether or not a fund, when a fund should bring on a CFO. So those are kind of the first kind of, and of course, banking, everyone's favorite subject this year. Those are kind of the main pillars of what you should be looking at in terms of, service providers as you're launching your fund.
Awesome. And then when we get a question a lot when we're talking to like an emerging manager or someone who's doing this for the first time, who do you choose and when? So when do you need to engage with legal? When do you need to choose your banking provider? What is kind of the timeline when you should decide, all right, I'm ready to go out and launch a fund. When do I engage with these providers?
Yeah, I think legal, typically that one is the first one that managers will start to engage with as early as possible. We always say, and this goes, this is the case for most of the service providers. Legal is really instrumental, again, in helping you navigate everything for the first time. As you're kind of putting together your thesis and your materials and starting to have some of those, initial conversations, that's when you want to start, interviewing legal firms. And then by the time you're getting ready, if you haven't already, I would say, at the very latest, when you're, heading into putting together more formal terms, your LPs, prospective LPs are starting to ask for documents, for the terms, et cetera. That's when you need to formalize that relationship. On the fund admin side, also a critical component to bring in as early as possible. Vector is a great example of this. They are also really helpful in helping you launch all of the kind of foundational pieces of your fund. So helping you think through how to, some of the terms in your LPAs that, specifically affect the accounting pieces. They can help you navigate the, setting up for expenses. How should I be tracking my fundraising expenses? My LPs are asking for, or pushing back and asking for this. Is this, something that I should be giving up? They're a really great resource for you in that process. And so I always say, get them in as early as possible. Audit and tax side, again, early. I can't stress this enough. Tax is especially helpful in the launch process and making sure that you are structured optimally, especially if you have some complexity, whether you're investing in, in foreign companies or bringing on foreign LPs. They're really instrumental in that process. And then just helping you understand, if you've never run a business before, this is your first time launching a fund, really helping you understand, what are the tax implications? How will you be taxed as a GP and owner of the management company? It's really good to get ahead of, a lot of those things before you get into the crazy, once you've had a first close. It's good to get a head start on those conversations. And then on the audit front, again, early, your LPs are, if they're sophisticated, they're going to be asking about your valuation policy. And that's something that your auditors can assist with. And of course, like in the market that we're in right now, the LPs have, more questions when it comes to valuations. And so your audit team can be a resource to you, especially in that early phase. And then I would just say, beyond just helping you in general, a lot of the service providers are pretty, they hit capacity pretty quickly. And so if you wait till the last moment and you have to, if you wait till December to choose your tax team, and you have to do taxes for 2023, it's going to be hard to find someone who can take you on, and they're not going to be as flexible on the pricing front. So for all those reasons, I would say get in as early as possible.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think that's what we tell people as well. Like as early as possible is definitely better. And a lot of these providers too, a lot of them will like hold off billing until you close. And a lot of service providers have terms like that to help you get set up in the best way possible. All right, Kristen, I have a question for you. So what key characteristics should firms look at when selecting these providers? There's so many in the space. Like, how do you choose who you should be working with? Oh, you're still on mute.
We definitely try to kind of take a matchmaker approach when we advise clients on, who to work with and why. We can argue the strengths and weaknesses of pretty much every service provider in every category. And I think beyond that, because each is going to have strengths and weaknesses, the most important thing is finding the right match based on like what you need specifically as a GP or as a GP team. This industry tends to, be pretty high on the service need versus, there's sort of a divide of people who want the white glove experience versus caring more about tech. And I think that's a really important thing to think through when you're considering who you use and why. To date, and obviously this could change over time, but the more tech heavy options, primarily in the fund admin space, but across the board, tend to be a little bit lighter or very light in the white glove service care. So definitely something to think about in terms of like what you need and why. And then, pricing can quite vary across the board. So really putting some thought into, your budget based on your AUM. But getting quotes, competitive quotes from relevant providers, and comparing them, really line iteming them, because they definitely offer a different swath across the board, and really making sure that it's covering the areas that you need most critically. And then also taking a look at who you're going to be working with within each organization. The team that you have makes a big difference in your quality of experience. And you're definitely wanting to look for the experience of the team, what their ability is to service you properly in terms of, either your fund structure or size, or your investment focus, if that's at all relevant. I know Nicole probably has a few things to add in there too, but that's sort of a general best practice.
Yeah, I would just say too, I think we've seen many examples of GPs going with service providers based on like a prior relationship or proximity, in the local area. And just one kind of flag with that is really making sure that your service providers have the VC expertise and experience. I know we talked, Emma and DLA Piper talked about this on one of the other calls, but, especially when it comes to fund formation and tax, and even audit, really making sure that they understand the VC space. You can go, I've seen, GPs go with larger audit firms, for example, that maybe, the bulk of their work is hedge and private equity, and they don't quite understand the early stage space. And that can really, if the teams don't understand it, it can really gum up the works, and, give you and your fund admin a lot of extra work. So I think that's probably one of the biggest points is making sure that they have that industry experience.
Yeah. And we see that every day too. Like we talk to people that are looking to switch auditors, looking to switch fund admins because they went with someone who may have been like a prior relationship that didn't know the space super well. So there are a lot of nuances specifically to venture that need to be addressed. So working with a provider that knows the space really well. I mean, this has come from in every single session we've done so far. So that's kind of, one of the main points. But
and especially, I would say, especially on the legal side too.
Yes,
across the board, but getting an LPA drawn up incorrectly, which is already expensive, can be an enormous expense to undo and correct, which I'm sure everyone probably knows well, or hopefully never has to find out about.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So can you describe, I know we talked a little bit about this, but can you describe some best practices for actually managing the relationships with service providers? So how do you actually, so you've engaged, but how do you actually work best with the people that you've chosen?
Yeah, I think we can both probably opine here. I think to start out is understanding pricing, how that structure works, especially if you're on an hourly kind of model, as with legal. So understanding, how their pricing works, what your budget is, making sure that that's communicated. And then, especially on the legal front, having frequent check-ins on how is billing looking? How many hours am I racking up? I can't tell you how many times a first-time manager gets that first initial bill after the first close, and it's well beyond, what they had budgeted or planned for. So I think that's important. Really understanding how the service providers work, what kind of work they are doing for you, what they don't do. I think understanding that early out the gates is going to be critical in having a good relation or building a good relationship with them over time. Having recurring check-ins with them, that is an absolute must, especially on the fund admin side. You should be having, at the very least, a monthly check-in if you're not super complicated. But we like to do bi-weekly check-ins. And that really is just a great place to touch base with your service providers, keep them up to date on what's going on. So any investments that are coming down the pipeline, any, big expenses that they're expecting, talking through capital calls that, you're planning on, et cetera. That gives them time to prep and plan for the things that you need them to get done. As a reminder, your service provider team is juggling multiple clients, multiple priorities. And so the more, efficient and effective that communication with them is, the better that relationship is going to be, and the more you're going to get out of them. I think that's something that, takes most GPs a little bit to learn, is how to really manage that. I'll let Kristen.
Yeah, I think at the highest level, like remembering they're human beings too. The old adage, like you get more flies with honey, and treating your service providers respectfully, being responsive, being kind to them. Probably a 0.01% exception. They're on your side. They want you to be successful. They want to be helpful. They're probably working, night and day to deliver for you. And we definitely see positive success with GPs who are good to their service providers, and there's a mutual care and respect. Response times go up. Turnaround times go up. It's a bit of a human basic 101, but I think sometimes we forget that in an industry that can be a bit transactional sometimes.
Yeah, and this is such an interesting industry where, in the standard business, you hire people to do all the stuff internally, but ventures very much you outsource pretty much everything. So at the end of the day, like these people, this is your team. These are the people that are running the backside of your business. So it's always great to have like a very team mentality when working with everyone on the back office side. Can you describe a scenario where effective leveraging of service providers has significantly improved some sort of operation with a fund?
Yeah, we can. I think one experience recently that we can speak to is, we had a client come to us who had some challenges with their fund admin, not Vector, and challenges in terms of delivering the quarterly reporting on time, which has actually increased. It's been a little bit surprising how many managers are having, challenges in this area right now. And I think a lot of it is, crazy market times, changes, fund admins, service providers are struggling with staffing, et cetera. But when we came in, we discovered there was no real process that had been established, both on the GP side and the fund admin side. And so we came out, and it's the issues are not that hard to fix. It's a simple, let's document a process, document the timelines for the reporting process. When, we expect the fund admin to provide the SOI, when we need to turn around that SOI with approval or comments or approval, and then when they, turn the financials around. And then having that process and sticking to those timelines allowed us to get caught up on quarterly reporting. And, this is especially important if you're going out to raise or in the middle of raising a fund or going out to raise a fund. You really want to make sure that you're delivering, to your LPs what you've agreed to in a timely manner so that you continue to build that trust with them.
Yeah, that's something that I even had a conversation today about this, where we talked about workflows with the team and making sure one of the biggest pieces was setting a timeline. So if you have 45-day reporting or if you have 60-day reporting, making sure that each person knows what they need to deliver, whether it's our side or it's in-house or the fund team, who needs to get what to where at what time, because obviously at the end of the day, you want to mitigate any risk of not meeting the deadline for, getting reports out to LPs or tax documents, the tax team, all that stuff. So super, super important. I talked a little bit about this just a second ago, but I want to touch on, what are the benefits of hiring in-house versus outsourcing? So we said, a lot of funds in this industry will outsource. I still come across funds that are like, I might hire, something in-house, but what are the benefits of using an outsourced service provider versus just hiring on your own?
Lots. I think at the highest level, again, going back to, expertise, they tend to be heavily in the trenches with clients. And I think the really cool thing about a service provider model in this space is the position from which they sit and their ability to see across the wider swath of clients. They see a ton of things that, can be directly applicable to helping and servicing you in a positive way. That, if you had one person in-house, horse blinders on, focused just on you, isn't going to get, or, if you're getting someone who's had multiple fund experience in-house, they're going to be super big bucks. The labor costs right now for the salaries right now in VC, back of house have only been climbing, especially on the financial side in the last few years. And for a lot of funds with limited AUM, it's just not realistic to pay those salaries, nor is it realistic to have a massive team. You just don't have the fees to support it. And leveraging a service provider can be a really powerful way to get a lot of muscle at a competitive price. That's definitely, one of the big things that we see, on our side is, you need IR help, you need fund admin support, you need legal support, you maybe need Marcom's PR support. But, contracting or hiring for all of that would completely crush your budget. So you can get a lot of muscle from, really, especially ideally an organization who specializes in venture. You can get a lot of muscle for a great price, which is a pretty powerful tool, especially when you've got, limited AUM and limited budget.
Yeah.
I know Nicole probably wants to add something too, but in that front.
No, I think that was great.
Good. Okay.
Yeah, so I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about the tech stack side of things. Do you have any advice to give to VC firms that are just starting and deciding on what tech stack they're going to use and how to build it?
Yeah.
That's a very good question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think what I've typically seen is, first-time GPs going out and polling their peers. Okay, what are you guys using? And that's a great question. And I think that can give you some good insights. But again, like going back to Kristen's original point about matchmaking with your service providers, it's a very similar approach on the tech stack side. And I know tech stack can be very overwhelming for a lot of different reasons. But in all areas, I think taking a step back and understanding what is, what do you need to accomplish? Who do you have on your team? What data do you need to collect and maintain? With portfolio data management systems, for example, what kind of criteria do your companies need to meet? Or deal flow management systems, what kind of criteria is there? And then, budget, of course, who's using the system, et cetera. Really like taking a kind of a holistic approach to figuring out what you need and what your budget is. And then going out with that information and doing the demos. Figuring out what systems are out there. You can, again, pull your peers. But I think being armed with the specific pieces that you need allows you to make better decisions.
Can you talk a little bit about what types of tech platforms that a fund needs? I know, there's like deal flow, LP portal. There seems to be so many, but what do you think is needed, especially for a first-time manager? Like, what do they need to look out for, and what kind of tech pieces would they use?
Yeah, I think we'll just run through the list, and I'll start from the bottom and go to the top where it's a little sexier. But you need a good, obviously, email management system. Most of our clients are on Gmail, and that's what we see in most cases. You need a good document management system. I cannot stress enough how critical this piece is. You're going to be 2 years down the road wondering where your formation, your certificate of formation is, and you're not going to be able to find it because it's, 2 years back in your email. You need to have a good document management system. If you have a team, figuring out how you're going to communicate on a daily basis. People still use Slack. Some people are opposed to Slack and they're on email or WhatsApp. So just figuring out how you're communicating. Having a good, day-to-day task management tool is really helpful. Beyond that, we start to get into, of course, Zoom, what you're using for video conferencing. You need to have a good password management tool. I come across so many GPs who don't have good password management practices, and this is one of those kind of security compliance pieces that should be implemented early, just to, obviously ensure that you have good controls and security practices in place. That's the basic. Then we get into your CRM system. So how are you either managing your LP deal flow coming in or your actual deal flow? On the LP side, if you're a first-time GP and you're launching your first fund, it doesn't have to be this, super sexy, expensive system that you're managing this in. It can be a really well-organized Excel sheet that costs you nothing, or, a Google sheet. But just having a way to organize the data so that it's not either living in your head or living in your inbox that you're going to have to access at some point. If you do decide to go down the CRM route, getting an actual system for that, there's lots of options out there. There's expensive, affinity types, and then you've got like the Airtables that are multi-purpose. And then having, if you're going to be managing your portfolio data company or managing any kind of metrics or data around your portfolio, having a system for that as well. Again, when you're starting off early, you've got, 1 to 10 investments. There's not a lot that you're tracking at this moment. I would just get into a really good habit and discipline of making sure that you are tracking the basic information that you need. You can, again, start on a Google Sheet or Excel sheet until you have your final close and you have your full budget. You don't have to get it right out the gates. But that is something that you want to invest in down the road. So making sure that again, you don't have to go super high tech, but having a place to manage all this data is going to be key.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even think about like the password stuff on it. There's so many more pieces that I even knew were involved.
Yeah.
But maybe a question for you, Kristen, as well. So we talked a lot about, there's so many pieces of the tech stack that you need to have it as a fund manager, but thinking about also the LP side of things, one of the biggest pieces of the tech stack is the LP portal, right? So how do you kind of evaluate what type of, platform that you want your LPs to be on? What do you see kind of across the board, and what do you find is like the best fit for most LPs?
Yeah. And I feel like, this is an area where what we say today will probably be irrelevant in 6 months, a year, I'm not sure, or at least hyper evolved. It's definitely an area and a space that's having a lot of, growth and new options, coming into the market. It's interesting, a lot, in a certain way, who you choose for legal can sometimes dictate what LP platforms, you're leveraging. Cooley is obviously very intertwined with vanilla, et cetera. So sometimes these choices are made for you depending on, who you leverage for legal. But, obviously, we see a lot of different things on the client side. When it comes to people building their own portals, especially if they've got the cash to do so, a lot of the fund admins have created either their custom software or have integrated with something like a Salesforce. So definitely a user's preference here, but we see a lot of amazing tools, and especially some that are coming to market or come to market recently and are evolving and iterating and integrating in really exciting ways, like pass-through. So it's quite broad, and I'll let Nicole probably dive a little bit deeper because I think this is also a good, strong area for expertise as well. But lots of good, positive change in this space, which is net new and net positive for everyone.
Yeah, I think you explained it well there. Obviously, the more tech tools that come to market, the more logins that the LPs have to have. So just being mindful of that. Having a digital subscription tool during the closing process is what I view is probably best practice now, and pretty industry standard. Nobody wants to be filling out their docs by hand anymore. And then, in terms of LP portals, having a place that where the LPs can go to access their information, that's really streamlined, is efficient, is easy to find. I think those are the biggest things. Obviously, and I know we're on with a fund admin right now. Carta is deemed as kind of the more sexier tool for, in terms of the LP perspective. It doesn't have to be super sexy as long as you just have, they're able to access their information quickly and easily, and be able to navigate the platform with ease, I think is the most important.
Yeah. We found that when we have funds that have, one of the struggles is they don't want LPs to have multiple logins. Like LPs want to find the information that they care about quickly and easily. Yeah. So I think navigating that and choosing the right providers and tech platforms that do that for your LPs has always ended up being kind of the best route to go.
Yeah.
So Kristen, you talked a little bit about this already, but there have been so many changes in technology over the last couple of years when it comes into the space. But can you talk a little bit how these changes in technology and service provider offerings have changed and impacted the VC fund space operations over the last few years?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of net positive, and then a little bit also a bit of overwhelming and complicated. And I think, even in the last decade, the biggest gotcha is always, there's no perfect CRM for this industry still. And we can have a hot, heated debate about that if you want at the Q&A. But, there is no one tech stack that rules them all. There is no one perfect tool for every fund and every person. And I think with the explosion of options across the board, from the CRM side to the document management side, there's a lot of strong options. And I think the most important thing with any tech stack item is buy-in from the team. There's no point in spending thousands upon thousands of dollars on something if nobody's using it. Most critically, probably the GP set, especially if it's, for deal flow or, tracking metrics that are critical for your reporting or your LPs, et cetera. Thinking through, what's best for you in that regard is probably one of the most critical pieces. And, it's okay to try something and pivot if it's not a fit, but net, if people aren't using it, it's dollars down the drain. And whether it's the best technology in the world doesn't matter, because if we don't have collective buy-in here, it's useless. So definitely thinking through that, from a critical decision maker and also a critical integration mindset, thinking about, what do you need long term? I mean, Nicole had a great point about, it's okay to start in a Google Sheet, because almost every single tech option that's out there can upload a CSV file, and then you're off and running, even if it takes all night. They can do it. So, it's okay to start with whatever, the duct tape, glue, and scissors model in V1, and then level up in what you're using as you, grow and mature over time. But, really thinking about, again, what's important to you, how much you can spend on these things, and where to spend as well, is probably, three of the most critical facets in making these decisions. I think it's wonderful that there's a variety of options in pretty much every category now. And I suspect, in the years ahead, that will only continue to evolve, and sure, some will probably eat the others over time. But, variety is great because it creates competitive pricing. They're pushing each other indirectly to, be the best and keep iterating and improving on the product, which is wonderful for us as users. So, to be TBD on the future, but I think being thoughtful about your tech stack across every category and giving, putting together something that, has a good foundation, serves your needs, gets team buy-in, has good, user engagement is probably the most critical. And then, keeping an open mind as you grow as a firm, that what worked in iteration 1 may not be what's best in 2, and pivoting when you need to.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that there's so many options that you can take a look at and use. And, we keep saying, like, every fund is different. Every fund might need different types of platforms. So it's always good to have that out there. Nicole, would you be able to touch on some trends that you're seeing in terms of the evolution of, like, the tech stack and where you think things might be going?
Well, I just think, first and foremost, in general, the VC industry, in terms of the tech tools that are now available, is, bringing it into the current century. I think for so long, it's always been a running joke that, VC is investing in the tech space, and, we haven't actually had any really great tools besides Salesforce and some of the older kind of dinosaurs. They haven't been available to us. And I think as the VC market exploded over the past 10 years or so, obviously the market opportunity has increased. And so we've been seeing more, more tools come to market to try to solve some of the pain points and challenges with this space. So for example, you've got, your pass-throughs, your digital subscription software that is making it incredibly easy for your LPs to subscribe to your fund. And we're really now, seeing founders trying to tackle the investor experience, whether that's the subscription process or, now they're working on, we're seeing a lot in the KYC, AML, and identity space. We're seeing some AI start to pop up. You see, there's the Omnis of the world that brought AI to, review documents and pull out terms. There's a couple other companies out there that are starting to, employ some of this stuff to really, again, solve the pain points and challenges. There's also, I think fund admin is one of those spaces, and we see that with Vector, who is bringing technology to solve, the day-to-day workflows, whether that's through their GL system or, through the various deliverables that they have. They're really thinking through, how can we do this better with technology, use less human capital on, the day-to-day kind of data entry stuff, and then be able to, provide even better quality service. So those are kind of some of the things that we've been seeing recently.
Yeah. I like the direction we're going in. I think it's definitely going in a good direction. Yeah. So we have 15 minutes left, so I'm going to open it up to the audience. Feel free to go ahead and ask or put in your questions in the question box. It's on the bottom right-hand corner. And as you guys are doing that, I do want to bring up something that is, been in the industry or been an issue over the last year, or I guess even like 6 months or so. But I want to talk a little bit about banking and how to navigate. So the issue right now is since the crash of FRB and SVB, there hasn't been a banking provider that has been dedicated to the VC space that we can trust as, the VC banking provider. So how do you work with clients to navigate that at the moment?
Well, I was just going to say, while we've been on this webinar, Citizens just dropped their big blast about new teams because they did their, respective First Republic coup, where HSBC, who most you'll remember bought the UK arm of SVB during the crisis, did their own coup with US-based SVB employees. And I think both are in a pretty big sprint to get the necessary systems, tools, and vehicles in place to be able to service the industry. So, a bit of a waiting game there and a TBD on that. But I think where we just lost a bunch of options, we will, in hopefully not too short of order, have some new things open back up. From our perspective, and working with clients, I think SVB under its new First Citizens umbrella seems to, for more or less, be operating business as usual. Mm-hmm. Things are churning and burning there. They've even kept their OG website. Like all the emails are the same. And in terms of a continuity of service on that side, we've seen things be pretty seamless as they've slid under, the First Citizens umbrella. I think also the jury might be a bit out on the FRB transition to JPM, in the sense that I don't get the sense from what we've seen that JPM has historically been very bullish on servicing the space. I think there probably will be interesting to see to what degree they pivot to staff, resource, and support this arm of the business. It's certainly not their bread and butter, but definitely something where over time they could continue to be a great option for fund managers if they're able to service this crowd. And then beyond that, there's a whole list of other firms who have been around, some have been around for quite some time, have maybe been less of a brand name or less of a known option. But, Mercury, while they don't, I think, have the full chops to service venture, they've definitely stepped up, especially in the crisis. They were incredibly helpful with our clients, running point on opening new accounts and getting money moved quickly and efficiently. Obviously, they've got the more sexy tech portal interface. City National, I would say our Royal Bank back friends, have been a player in the space. PacWest, which was just recently acquired by Bank of California, continues to, as a regional bank, service the industry. And then, some second tier options, less venture focused but stable. Citibank, USB, and PNC are all viable options for fund managers who are seeking, some support. I can happily go on record and also recommend banks to stay away from, not in a net negative about the bank itself, but they're just not equipped to service us properly. And I think their actions around supporting us has not been awesome, because they're just not equipped to do it. I'm gladly call out B of A on that one. They're a great bigger bank for certain people, but they're certainly not for us. They're very shied away from us, and we've definitely seen clients have their accounts closed with zero explanation, and multi-millions of dollars sent in a check in the mail because they deemed they figured out who we were, or who the fund was, and that they shouldn't be they didn't want them banking with them. It's not a net knock on B of A, albeit archaic, but as an institution and a banking provider. But it's a bummer that we had to go through what we went through this year. I think it was a real wake up call to the industry. There's nobody quite like what we had, and all of the flexibility and tools from venture debt and supporting the startups we invest in. Finding that replacement, it just doesn't exist in the same form or in the same way.
Yeah. And Nicole, was there anything that you wanted to add to that?
No, Kristen hit it all.
I feel like we could do a whole webinar on that topic.
Yeah, you could. And it's a lot of unknown too. I've heard really positive things from the team that Citizens acquired. They've got a lot of flexibility and support to run in the space where, being under the FRB umbrella obviously had, more regulations and limitations. So that's going to be exciting to see what the team there does, both on the venture and the startup side. It'll be interesting to see how much SVB is able to, control market share, historically as being the big dog with 60+%, and having that rapidly change. It'll be interesting to see how they hold weight over time.
Yeah.
And then with the new players in the market too, how bullish are they on this space? Because it's complicated and it's high risk to a certain degree. So
absolutely. Yeah. So here's a question. So what
this
unique
is for Nicole? This is a good one.
Yeah. What unique vendor and tech challenges do you see for funds that touch crypto or digital assets?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a little bit of a different environment now, obviously. On the service provider side, I would say, even a year ago, 2 years ago, when crypto and digital asset was having its moment, I would say a lot of the traditional service providers were still pretty apprehensive about taking on, especially in the traditional venture space. They were more apprehensive about taking on kind of a new asset, and a lot of their concerns were around risk profiles, and not it's a new thing. There's new accounting practices that need to be applied, audit practices that need to be applied. There's ambiguity around tax, et cetera. And so, your kind of traditional VC providers were apprehensive. And even in some of the bigger ones that did, start to come into the, take the market, still took a pretty conservative approach. we haven't seen, a crypto or digital asset fund in the last 6 months. 10 months, I would say, just given all that's happened. So I can't say exactly how attitudes have changed, but I would imagine that they've gotten even more conservative. So that can be an issue if you are, in this space. And then beyond that, on the tech side, again, you're dealing with a new kind of investment instrument, and some of your traditional fund admins may not have the systems that are set up for that. You need to go with a bigger fund administrator who's, has more capabilities, has been more on the public side, can, kind of tailor their systems for that. And then, beyond that on, the portfolio deal flow, portfolio data collection side, obviously, it's a little bit different. And some of the major tools and most popular tools are really, customized for the more traditional types of, venture instruments. And so it is a little bit harder to find something that fits your needs there. I say, I think overall it's, there's a lot more challenges, especially right now.
Yeah, definitely. And we are also a fund admin that supports digital assets too. So, but definitely going back to what we had talked about before, but it's difficult to find players in the space that know digital assets and crypto well. And I do think working with a provider, especially on the audit side, especially on the fund admin side, legal, tax, like you do need to work with people who know the space, because there are so many differences between a crypto fund and a traditional equity VC fund. So that's just really important as well. Okay, another question. Are there any data storage providers that you recommend for emerging managers to house investor information? So like addresses, tax IDs, info that will be needed to provide tax info to the accountants for K1s.
Yeah. Most fund managers rely on their fund admins to store this information, which can be, I don't recommend that as a best practice. I think you should have your own data set, both to verify what the fund admin has is correct. And then as well, you want to be able to access that information immediately. And so, we've seen Google Sheets, when I talk about CRM systems for the investor side, this also includes, keeping all of that information on your investor from, the, type of investor it is, EINs, social security numbers. You've got, their addresses, their contact information, their contact preferences, etc. It's really nice to have that in your own database. Obviously, if you're storing sensitive info like social security numbers, you need to have some better security practices around that. But for everything else, things like Google Sheets, Excel sheets, Airtable is a multi-purpose tool that we see a lot of firms using. If you have a bigger budget and are, combining like a communication tool, for instance, like HubSpot or Salesforce, we've seen some of those tools come into play. But for the most part, like Airtable's pretty standard for that.
Yeah. And is that the same for the SOI too? So I know that best practice is for a fund manager to track their own schedule of investments or their own investments internally as well. So don't always rely on the fund manager. What is your advice on that side too?
Yeah, again, and this is, I'm just hammering home the point. You have to have your own records. Your fund admin is, again, juggling multiple priorities, multiple clients. There's going to come a time where you need data and you need it instantly. And so having that within your own system is going to be critical. On the portfolio side, we've seen everything from, this all just depends on what you need. But we've seen everything from like Airtable, which is again multi-purpose, it's low budget, There's Visible. They do a lot of portfolio data collection, and can keep data and metrics on your fund. We've seen more expensive systems like Etta, which was formerly Cusham. There's a couple platforms that have come out of Europe that are definitely more geared towards the bigger private equity funds, but they've started to come into the VC space. So those are just a few of the options that we typically see.
Yeah, awesome. I know we're pretty much up on time, so I do want to wrap it up. I guess any last advice, Nicole and Kristen, that you'd want to share for everything that we talked about?
I would say, this is no piece of cake job, whether you're just starting out or you're in it and that. I think what Kristen started with is, you're running your own business. You're essentially, as a GP, you're a CEO. And so, while your primary objectives, your biggest goal is to return capital and, have really good performance numbers. But in order to do that, there's all these pieces that need work, they need discipline, they need investment. And so the more that you can balance all of that and, prioritize them, I think the better results you'll see.
Yeah. Kristen, what about you? Any last minute words? You're still on mute, by the way.
I'm also it's like so many little nuggets I don't want to hit on, but I think echoing what Nicole said, this is starting a fund is like a huge commitment. Think of the relationships that you're building here, both on the service provider side and with your partners and the team you build and everyone in the ecosystem. It's a long game. It's akin to a marriage, and as well as you treat others, hopefully you'll get the reverberations of that. I'm a big play nice in the sandbox person, so I think I just see that people who take a good attitude to everything that they're doing here, taking good care of their service providers, being good to their employees, like the good gravy always flows back to them. So I encourage everyone to take that mindset. And don't be. I think the other big thing I always say is don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be too stubborn or proud. This is complex. Making the right decisions is difficult. Getting a lot of helpful input from people like Emma, Nicole, the team we have, other connections and service providers in the market, and can be invaluable to help you avoid common missteps and pitfalls that we see managers fall into. So don't be shy, reach out, because, I'd happily answer a question. I know Nicole feels the same. For someone takes 3 minutes, and helps them avoid a mistake rather than them not reaching out or feeling like they shouldn't or can't.
Yeah. Well, thank you both so much. This has been really awesome. I think I've learned so much from it too. And thank you to everyone in the audience for joining. I will send out a follow-up. It'll have a link to this recording. So if you want to take away any of that information, share it, do as you will with the video. And we will have another session. It'll be with Arden CPAs. We're going to be talking tax. That'll be in 2 weeks on Wednesday. So I'll send more information out about that. But thank you again. Thank you, Kristen, Nicole.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Yeah. Anytime.